my first instinct, and I passed several bills, just me. And I've stopped, sometimes it's stopping bad things too. There's a yin and yang politics. Sometimes you're passing great things, sometimes you're stopping really bad things. I think we've had a lot of success in that. And also, I've sued twice to have bad laws struck down successfully, the voter ID law and the NRA Act 192. We can sue you if you even think about the word gun bill. So anyway, and they're both struck down now. But when I want to pass an important piece of legislation, my first thing is, can I find a Republican partner? Because if I can find a Republican co-prime, suddenly it's not crazy liberal Daylin's idea. And so, like, let me tell you, and there's many examples. My B Corp bill, my human trafficking bills with Stuart Greenleaf, but I think the most famous one is the medical marijuana bill. So when I introduced it, I couldn't get a co-sponsor, and I knew I needed a Republican, and people thought it was very controversial at the time. So I went to the usual suspects. I went to the southeastern moderate Republicans, right, whose moderation it's debatable, but putting that aside, they were considered moderate. And every one of them was like, oh, good luck with that deal. Some of them were, I always tell there, some of them were like, I love your bill. I hope it passes. Obviously, I can't vote for it, and I'll have to issue a press release condemning you for introducing it, but deep down here, I'm with you, which was a great comfort to me. So anyway, so I was sort of despairing. And then one day, a senator I never would have predicted, one of the most conservative senators there, a guy named Mike Fulmer, came up to me. And when I say conservative, he has all the credentials. Obama was born in Kenya, the world's 6,000 years old, all that. So anyway, he comes up to me, but he's always a nice guy. And he's like, hey, how you doing, Mike? And he said, I like that medical marijuana bill of yours. So I'm like, yeah, I know, but you can't support it. He goes, no, I'd be willing to support it publicly. And I was like, So immediately I called a press conference before he changed his mind or like got hit with a bus or something. So, and it's interesting because the reason I think, and I'm not speaking out of school, he talks about this, is he has lymphoma, and he understands how the suffering of something like that and how this can help the suffering of something like that. So once I had Mike Fulmer on board, every door opened, because there was a curiosity. People are so confused by partisanship. Quick story. I went to a concert. I went to a Steely Dan concert with Kurt Schroeder, who was a very conservative Republican in the House, in Delaware County, actually. And it made the Inquirer. It was a story in the Inquirer. I'm like, we went to a freaking concert. So anyway, it was this huge curiosity that Mike and I were having this press conference together. And then I said, I'll handle the Democrats, you handle the Republicans. But then we met with senators, and we did something that never happens in Harrisburg. We changed people's minds. And it could not have happened if it wasn't bipartisan. And we wound up passing it 43-7 in the Senate. And we don't really name bridges 43-7 in the Senate, and then we passed it 149-46 in the House. The governor signed it. It's going to be the most important piece of social legislation in the last 40 years. It'll save thousands of lives in terms of the opioid crisis, in terms of direct medical benefits, and it'll create an entire new industry with tens of thousands of jobs, direct and ancillary, and hundreds of millions of dollars into the taxpayers' coffers. I mean, this is a huge deal. And so the first thing you do is try to find, and that's why on my minimum wage bill, I'm now working hard with a Republican who has not authorized me to disclose his name yet, because I think we're that close to them jumping on board with the $15 minimum wage, because he wants to stop people from having to go on food stamps and other things. He doesn't want to pay taxes for these social programs, and why the hell should rich corporations not have to pay their workers? By the way, 15, if anyone's worried about that, if the minimum wage had kept pace with labor productivity, it would be about 18 an hour. If it had kept pace with CEO pay, it'd be about $40 an hour. Okay, so, they find the money for that. So, you try to find partners. Part of it is trying to be a friendly, affable, happy guy. Animal rights stuff, I work with Senator Alloway. Work a lot on criminal justice reform with Senator Greenleaf, who's really good on those issues. You find people with common ground and you try to move the ball forward. More of that needs to happen in Congress. There's very little of that now. Even being very liberal, I think that there are many things I can find to agree with conservative Republicans that we can move forward. And not everything, but certain things. Yes, sir.
You mentioned interest-free college. And I think you used the word public education in there somewhere.
Well, it would be available for public universities, not
All right. Well, let me ask you a
private.
question about that. Why not? There are statistics that I saw recently that suggested that private universities are failing in this country at a rate twice as high as normal. The worst hit are black universities. Why not offer that same deal? You see in schools like LaSalle, for instance, which is suffering terribly right now, and I'm sure others are, outside of Penn and a few other schools in the area that have the money, have to stay alive and thrive. There must be a lot of schools within the 7th District that suffer from the same thing that LaSalle suffers to one extent or the other. Why not offer that same deal to private universities, students?
A couple things. Number one, you're right. I mean, I've been dealing recently, Cheney University is barely surviving, may not survive. And Lincoln University, and there's a number of them.
All in the district.
As a congressman, you look nationwide, and there are definitely private schools that are suffering. Here's a couple of issues that we have to at least think about. They say politics is the art of the possible. So the college for public universities and community, that includes places like Penn State, community colleges, and vocational schools. That would cost, they say, nationally about $45 billion. And there's sources of that money that you can come up with. I don't know what the dollar figure is if you include private schools, and would it include 100% of private schools? And the reason I ask, and I'm not saying it shouldn't, I'm just saying we have to think about it, is that private schools are often much, much more expensive. And so does the price tag become so prohibitive that we kill the whole idea? That's number one. There's also some issues constitutionally we have to deal with around religious schools, that in terms of separation of church and state, which may not exist much longer, but to the extent it still does, can we give money to a LaSalle or now you can give it to the student under a student loan program, but if it's you have to structure it the right way. But my thinking is introduce legislation. I mean, my bill in Pennsylvania isn't free college at all. It's you pay it back, but it's just a very affordable way to pay it back.
I'm thinking more as an extension of Pell Grants, rather than school.
No, I hear you. And again, you want to introduce legislation. I mean, if we passed my bill, everyone would be able to go to college. Now, then, can everyone go to Harvard if they can't afford it but are good enough to get into Harvard? That's, I think, a next step question. I don't know what the price tag on that is, and I don't want to endorse something without knowing that, because that's an obvious question, and we don't want to make it so it's so expensive that we kill the idea entirely. But I want people to at least have an option of going to college. I have no philosophical objection to the private schools. I just don't know if it's a much heavier lift politically. And like, for example, when I did the medical marijuana bill, people were like, great, and let's put in the bill that the money has to go to schools, right? Which is a great idea. The problem is other people wanted the money to go to transportation, other people wanted it to go to tax cuts. So if I started deciding that issue, it would have killed the medical marijuana bill. I'm like, let's just get that passed, and then we'll have a big fight about where the money goes. I'd love to have that fight, okay? Similarly, let's get everyone going to college, at least somewhere, and then we can start arguing about how can we make it more comprehensive? Is it affordable? Does it make sense? I'm happy to have that discussion, but I would like, the one thing I'm desperately trying to avoid is the tragedy of a smart, talented kid who doesn't go to school because he doesn't have the money. That's number one. Yeah.
So piggybacking on that idea, not everyone is destined for college, nor should they go. So is there a vocational kind
Yeah, I
of?
just said that would include vocational education.
I'm sorry, okay, I missed that.
Yeah, no,
So-
it would include 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, like community colleges.
Right.
It would include vocational schools, welding school, whatever it is. We want everyone to go as far as their potential. Not only because it's good for them, obviously, and their families, but I mean, just as a, one of the things we never do in politics is think long term in terms of, that's why our budget in Harrisburg is such a mess. If you have a college degree, you earn, like $1.6 million more on average than you would have over a lifetime than you would have if you didn't have a college degree. Now, if we tax them at whatever rate we tax them, that's a lot more money into the coffers of either the federal government or the state government, because these people are paying more in income tax and they can buy more expensive stuff, so they're paying more in sales tax. And so it's good for everybody if we have people doing their, the last thing we want is someone who could be a great welder. Welders make good money. I don't know what they make exactly, but I know, I'm always told they make really good money. Instead, picking up trash at an amusement park because they couldn't afford to go to welding school, making a third the money, living a crappy life, and not, being able to buy things, not paying taxes. We want everyone to do as much as they can do. I mean, I went to college, I went to law school, and I got lucky. I got some grants, I got some scholarships, I got student loans, I was in a lot of debt. But at least I had the opportunity. If I didn't go to college and law school, I don't know what I'd be doing now. I have no actual marketable skill. This is really, I've seen firsthand in my own life how important those opportunities are. Yes, ma'am.
If you were representing us in the House of Representatives in Washington, which of the issues surrounding K through 12 education would you address, assuming that we have Secretary DeVos?
Well, assuming we have Secretary DeVos, I'd be trying to make the case not to close every public school. Literally, she comes from an organization historically which does not believe in what they call government schools. Okay, you gotta say it the right, government. And they have these posters of Milton Friedman, and they're like, they believe that, I guess we should all, and I've heard people say, just a little historical context. The idea of universal education is a relatively new idea historically. It used to be that, the elite got educated, everyone else went in the fields or the factories. And not everyone buys into universal education. You may be shocked to hear that. But that is not a universally accepted idea. And I've had fellow legislators basically, when we're arguing in the back of the hall, basically say to me, look, if you have a kid and you want to educate them, go educate them. Why am I involved in this? Okay, it's your kid, okay? Now, and I hear that, frankly, I hear that from constituents sometimes. They're like, why should I pay property taxes? I don't have kids, or my kids are all grown. And I'm like, every time that you go to a doctor, you're going to a doctor who is educated by your tax dollars. Or every time you drive on a road, it was built by an engineer that you paid to educate. And I can give 100,000 examples. So we all benefit from people being educated. Not everyone sees it that clearly. So Betsy DeVos is a problem. And I dealt with her when I was leading the fight against the voucher bill, Senate Bill 1. Successfully, we beat that bill despite some Lower Merion residents putting $5 million into a campaign against me and others. What was interesting about that bill, and goes to your question, is this. They said failing schools would be eligible for these vouchers. I'm going to have to get into the details of the vouchers. But how did they named 144 failing schools. You know what they all had in common? They were all in impoverished areas. So when people, and they were all underfunded. So when people, 100% of them, there was not one Lower Merion type of school who was a failing school. So when people say to you, funding of schools is irrelevant to educational outcomes, it's rare that you get 100% correlation in anything. All right, so I'm just very skeptical about that. It's hard to teach computer literacy when they don't have computers. It's hard to teach, Catcher in the Rye when there's only one copy that the teacher has and none of the other kids has it. You know, and there's no smart boards, and there's no new basic nutrition, and there's no security. It's very hard to teach in that environment. And so the very first thing we need to do is make sure the federal government should be an equalizer. When they say, let's return it to the states, that's their way of saying, I don't want to think about it. Because, you know, a lot of states don't